Last day of party conference, of course, the big day of Theresa May giving her speech to the party faithful. Do you think she'll get the same sort of reaction as Boris Johnson got yesterday? Standing ovation before he'd even said a word.
Well, yeah, there's been such a strong feeling of support at this conference in the main hall for getting behind the Prime Minister. And that's, I know Boris arrived and had his fringe event, and there have been lots and lots of fringe events, but in the hall, right from the get-go on Sunday, the sense in the party is we need to get behind the Prime Minister, get on and get that Brexit deal, but crucially get onto the domestic agenda, improving the country that we serve.
Well, this is the issue, isn't it? So you say in the hall there's been loyalty. There's a lot that's being said on the fringes, lots that's being said behind closed doors and behind hands. In the Daily Telegraph today, saying that senior cabinet ministers are saying it's a matter of when, not if, the Prime Minister goes, and she needs to name a date to go. Should she name a date, and if so, when?
No, she said that she's in it for the long term, and the crucial thing is that we need to be driving this domestic agenda, which is there have been so much new ideas, new proposals this week. You're absolutely right that the vibrancy on the fringes, it's a party full of ideas. I found it really enlivening being at conference, and of course we have a raucous discussion about it. And but the PM has been out making announcements on the future immigration system for the country. That's a massive question that we're providing answers to on my area, on healthcare, making sure that there's more money for social care so that this winter people can get out of hospital when they don't need to be in hospital, and make sure the hospital beds are freed up. There's a whole series of things that the PM's been driving.
And in terms of that domestic agenda, there's a lot of talk about the bandwidth of Brexit stretching over everything. Well, even into your own department, are there going to be shortages of medicines and if we have a no-deal Brexit come next March? Is that, in your experience, in your department, is that using up an awful lot of not just ministers but civil servants, other officials' time and energy, and indeed resources, when they could be focusing on dealing with lots of more bread and butter issues that people want dealt with?
Well, we have had to bring in more civil servants to deal with Brexit, and of course it's a big issue. I mean, and how we settle it will define the next our relationship with Europe for the next generation. So of course it matters. But I think we've shown this week that there's a whole series of other things that we're doing as well.
Okay, well, you spoke yesterday in the main hall, and you were talking about ending the closure of local community hospitals. You said more emergency social care funding to free up hospital beds.
Yeah.
But you also, it's something you've been talking about an awful lot, and it actually sort of strays into other cabinet ministers' territory, but is definitely a big health issue, and that's the danger of children's mental health from social media.
Yes.
That's a big issue for you.
It is, because it's a big issue for parents. Social media is great, and loads of us find out more stuff and can communicate with each other better because of it. But it
can listen to talk radio on your app.
Go ahead. It has some downsides, and one of those is its impact on young children. And the terms and conditions of most social media sites says that don't use them before you're 13. That's true for Facebook and others. Don't use it before you're 16 for WhatsApp. But the companies do absolutely nothing to police that, and we have seen increasing evidence of the impact on children's mental health from the use of social media, because things can get circulated which are really unpleasant, and children are too young to be able to deal with.
Is this a matter for government or indeed the social media companies, or is this a matter, for instance, for parents? If you're not allowed on Instagram until you're 13, don't let your child on until they're 13.
Well, that's how we parent our own children. They're not allowed on social media because my eldest is 11. But that's not easy. I'm an expert in this stuff, and I've got a strong view about it. And it's still hard to hold the line when all your classmates are on social media. So this is something that we need to resolve as a society. So I do think that it's a matter for parents, but I also think that we can help in government by providing guidelines. I'm not, as opposed to this hard rules, it's a guideline so parents can say, look, that is what the advice is, that you shouldn't be on for more than a certain amount of time, perhaps, or that you shouldn't use it overnight, or whatever the evidence-based rules come out as from the chief medical officer. So it's not a political thing. It comes from the medical experts, and then parents can say they're the rules, and we in this house are sticking by the rules.
And is there anything the government can actually do other than make sure the information is out there?
Well, there are other things that we can do, and we're going to bring forward a white paper which is being led by Jeremy Wright in the Culture Department, and Sajid Javid as Home Secretary, on some of the higher harms, some of the really serious stuff, where we do want to make sure that the social media companies take responsibility for what's on their sites. But when it comes to helping parents, it's much more about enabling them rather than telling them what to do.
Okay. Well, and you're here, was talking to us ahead of the final day of party conference. The only big event today is the Prime Minister's speech. There's a lot of pressure on her, especially after what happened with Boris Johnson. Are we going to get any really substantial announcements, big hitting announcements? Jeremy Corbyn last week, whether you agree with the policies or not, made a number of huge, big announcements. There was real substance, both him and John McDonnell's speeches, in terms of what they wanted to do, what they wanted to be in government for. Are we going to get that from Theresa May today? Is she going to announce things? Because all we've seen so far, the Sun front page has got the fact that the fuel duty is going to be frozen for the 9th year running. Realistically, it would be political suicide to not freeze fuel duty this. You're just raising your eyebrows at me. Philip Hammond is quite a big fan of making politically astute decisions when it comes to his budgets. but realistically, is that the big announcement from Theresa May today, or are we going to actually get something people can get their teeth into?
Well, we've seen all week a whole series of policy announcements, steps forward on the domestic agenda, and I think we can expect to see more in the speech. The Prime Minister setting out her positive vision for where we want to be once we've got a good deal on Brexit, and how we then turn Britain into the brilliant place that we all know that it can be. And
is it not now?
And well, I think it's brilliant, yeah, but it can be even better. And that's what we're in politics for. Most people in politics are in politics to make the country a better place, and so she'll be setting that out, and there's more details to come, and maybe even some more news.
Okay, well, let's talk about things rather more personal. You did an interview with GQ magazine where you've spoken for the first time about your struggle with dyslexia, but you'd never spoken out about that before. Why not?
Well, I hadn't, and I think it's because I thought that being dyslexic might, and talking about it might portray a weakness, but actually I came to realise that for me it's been a strength, and also I was talking to somebody else who both of us were dyslexic, neither of us knew, and then we both found out, and he said to me, look, you've made the cabinet, and you really can talk about this, and maybe it'll help some other people, maybe who are growing up and are dyslexic, to realise that you really can get quite a long way in life. And
how much did it affect you as a child? How severe was it?
Well, it was significant, but definitely not as bad as some other people's. I wasn't actually diagnosed until I was at university. And I had a tutor who said to me, "Look,
your spelling's atrocious.
When you talk about this stuff, you make the argument well, and then when you write it down, it doesn't. It's muddled." And then I got help, and that made a huge difference to my life. And also, the other thing that really saved my life was professionally was spell checker. I arrived in. I started working 20 years ago, and Microsoft Word and spell checker had just sort of become normal. If I'd arrived in the workplace 10 years before that, I think I would have made really basic errors, and it would have been.
And do you think, was it your fear that you'd be written off? This awful thing that lots of kids, adults now would say, if I'd been diagnosed, I wouldn't have been written off as thick. I was a bright kid who was just simply dyslexic.
And even when I was first talking about this in public, when I was talking to GQ a few weeks ago, that thought was going through my mind.
Even today, as a cabinet minister?
Because this is about it's something that affects you every day because you have to translate thoughts onto paper all the time. And I've received some fantastic messages since this went public yesterday. People saying, my kids are dyslexic, and you've inspired them that they can achieve. And there's so many really kind messages, and it makes the whole thing really worthwhile. I'm so glad I did it. And I also want to pay tribute to Ed Balls, because he had a stammer and he didn't talk about that for a long time, and then he did, and hearing him talk about it helped me to decide to go public.
It's almost like politicians are human sometimes, isn't it? We forget that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, you mentioned your student days as when you were diagnosed. So a couple of stories out today involving university students. They seem to have changed a lot from my day. Plymouth Students' Union, on the front page of the Mirror newspaper today, pictures them at a rather rowdy party. Initially, actually, it looks like it's from Tory party conference, but it isn't. It's something that happened in Plymouth. But they're wearing T-shirts. So one of the T-shirts has scrawled on it in felt pen an F word, the NHS. They're young Conservative party members of the student union there. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I've only just been shown this, and obviously I completely disagree with the with the sentiment. But more importantly, I understand that the party is looking into it, and we don't know whether or not they're connected to the party. But if they are, they'll be dealt with. I mean, this is not.
Robert Halfon was here earlier. The Conservative MP said they're idiots and they should be kicked out.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably about right. And the truth is, this party loves the NHS, as I do, because it's been there for me and my family as it's been there for yours.
Yes, well, I'm the daughter of an NHS GP. How is it that the Conservative Party cannot seem to make inroads in this? That again and again polls show that it is the Labour Party that's trusted on the NHS. Or if you look on social media, that sort of save the NHS. If I love the NHS, it's very much associated with Labour. Why are you seen to be effectively the baddies when it comes to the issue of the NHS?
Well, I don't think we are. I reject it because for more of its life, the NHS has been run by the Conservative Party than any other party in government. It is something that it's doing so much more than in 2010. We've just given it the largest funding settlement in history, £20 billion extra over the next 5 years, so that we can guarantee its future. I'm really excited about what the NHS can do over the next 5 to 10 years. Of course, we've got to address the pressures as well, and we've put the money in so that we can do that. I announced more money just yesterday to make sure that we can get people out of hospital and get them the care they need so they can get back into their own home, out of hospital and freeing up beds. So we love the NHS. I love the NHS, and it's been there for my family, and that's why people care about it so much.
And just finally, another students' union in the news today, of course, is Manchester University Students' Union, because they've said they want people to no longer clap when they're reporting, because it's triggering people who suffer from anxiety, and they should have jazz hands. So hands up, palms out, and waving the hands about. Do you think that's how Tory delegates should applaud the Prime Minister's speech today?
No, I do not.
Can you ever see a time when that's what Tory delegates will do?
Not only Tory delegates, but the vast majority of the nation. Let's applaud good news with vigour.
Do you worry, though, that we are getting into some rather strange territory where people are saying that clapping is... we've got safe spaces. I've been in trouble for that this week. We've got people saying you mustn't clap, you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that. Are you worried we're getting into some quite strange territory here?
I think that the freedom of speech that has long underpinned our nation it must be protected, and maybe those of us who believe in it need to get out there and make the case more, because the idea of safe spaces where you're not allowed to express some opinions because you might offend, I think it's completely wrong. If you disagree with an opinion, take it on, have the debate. That's how we progress as a democracy. So this jazz hands thing is a case in point. I think it's bonkers, and it'll never catch on. But it'll only never catch on because we should make the argument for why clapping. I never thought I'd go into politics in order to make the argument for clapping, honestly. And free enterprise and freedom of speech.
Thank you very much indeed.
We can applaud that.
I want you to applaud. Everyone's standing applauding. We're all applauding with our... No, I'm going with jazz hands.